You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
Going into the second round of the playoffs here this evening. We did a bit of a Knicks Celtics preview on our last pod when we didn't know who we were going to play, but now we have it. It's the Knicks Celtics, first time in the second round in a long ass time, mostly because the Knicks suck all the time. What's your opening take here? Good morning, by the way. And what's your opening take?
Did we say we're brought to you by the Fans First Sport Network?
We did not, but I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, we're brought to you by the Fan First Sports Network.
We should get with some folks in New York from Fans First and do a pod.
We should.
They're so friendly over there.
Yeah. We'll see if there's anyone that exists. I'm sure there is. We'll try to find them.
Yeah, I'm sure there is too. What's my opening thought?
Yeah, on the series, just overall, good weekend, of basketball. So
Yeah, great weekend of basketball. The Knicks closed out the Pistons later in the week last week, so it was a good finish for them. Obviously, what Brunson did at the end of that game, throughout that game six, he's a dangerous player, clutch player of the year. So in close games, certainly makes you a little nervous with them being the opponent. So that'll be a challenge for Drew Holiday and the Celtics. Which
big news with Holiday being healthy.
Yeah, big news with Holiday. Obviously, the Celtics in the regular season did great against Brunson, but Brunson's a different animal in the postseason. He has shown that now going into 3 straight years. So I think that's the Knicks' best hope is to keep things close and hope that he can close games out. And then just around the league, I mean, a lot of great games. The game sevens I thought sucked. I thought the game sixes were great, but these 2 game sevens that we got out west, absolute blowouts, no shows by the Rockets and the Clippers. James Harden was just horrible.
James Harden.
Kawhi Leonard, all the heat's going to Harden. Kawhi Leonard was the minus 33, which, a guy who missed most of the season, put his team in a tough spot to be on the road and just didn't show up. And then you look at the Rockets, who played so great, and you saw their youth just show up in that game 7 last night. That I didn't feel like that was ever really a game. Good for Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield had the best game of his life last night.
He did. It was a Buddy Hield game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both ends of the floor too. Yeah.
Yeah, as Golden State moves on, well coached, great organization in Golden State. As much as I hate Steve Kerr, and so Jen, as I focus on the Celtics here, I'm starting to think a little bit about. Everybody's talking about the Celtics in 4 or 5. I mean, how did the Knicks win this series?
It's a really good question. I think the first thing, if you're the Knicks, is you look back, all right, is there anything we can replicate from, what Orlando did? And then, what did we do well, particularly in that last game against the Celtics where, they really had a shot to win. Tatum hits that 3 at the end. It sends it to overtime. Number one, I think the one thing they can replicate from the Orlando series is they can crash the glass with a lot of reckless abandon. They have guys that are capable of doing that. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson stand out, but Josh Hart's a really good offensive rebounder. Anunoby can be a presence on the glass, even though it's not necessarily his game. So I would be looking for a lot of second chance opportunities against the Celtics. And I would also look at any chance I get to have the opportunity to run, and try to play fast. But the number one thing I'm looking to do if I'm the Knicks is I want to get the Celtics defense in rotation as much as possible. I think I've come to the conclusion that my defense isn't really going to be good enough to slow them down enough where I can depend on that and lean on that to win. So how do I outscore the Celtics? And I just think the way to do this, if you're the Knicks, is you need to actually commit to the Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson pick and roll. If you play this offense like you did against the Pistons, where you're dribbling Brunson around for 15 seconds, the Celtics are going to love that. That feeds right into what they want to do. You may get some hoops. It may look good sometimes, but if you're going to finish with 102 points or 104 points against the Celtics, they're going to be fine with that because they feel like they can score 120 on you. And there's a lot of confidence and a lot of reason for the Celtics to believe they can do that. So you need to kind of speed things up. You can't play the style you've been playing, particularly in that Pistons series. And I think the best way to speed things up is early in your possessions is to run that Karl Anthony Towns, Brunson's pick and roll. It will start to free up shooters because it's going to force the Celtics to help because those two players are such deadly offensive players. But it's a real question of whether the Knicks will commit to doing that because they haven't. And I think part of the reason is they're afraid of Karl Anthony Towns picking up early fouls because he's constantly in foul trouble, which isn't a good sign for a $50 million player. But I, they just haven't done it, and it's not like there isn't comfort in doing it between Cat and Brunson because when they do it, it looks good. So I think that's what I'm focused on most. So the offensive rebounding, getting out and running, which it really isn't the Knicks style either, and then getting into your actions early, particularly that like Karl Anthony Towns, Brunson pick and roll, and then as if there's a last thing, it's just kind of a lineup issue. I would tinker with that Robinson, Karl Anthony Towns double bigs a little bit, but those would be the things I'd be looking to do. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything to add or you think I'm wrong, but those are the things I'd be looking to do if I'm the Knicks.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. It's a hard series for the Knicks. They don't match up well. They went all in on these wings with Anunoby and Bridges, and I think this is the time if you're a New York fan that they need to show up. They need to show up big defensively. They both played well in the Pistons series on both ends of the floor. So I know there's a lot of excitement in New York that maybe this is the time they can slow down Tatum, but they haven't been able to slow down Tatum now for 2 seasons, and
He's averaging what, 35 a game or close to that against them this year?
yeah, and it's
33 or
almost
something. Yeah.
Bridges can stay in front of him and has done a good job actually staying in front of him, but Tatum just bodies him up and shoots over the top of him. Um, it's got like this big brother feel to it. When Bridges is on him, he's just not strong enough. And Anunoby plays real physical with Tatum, but can't stay in front of him. So it's
They switch off of that. They've because there's so many weak matchups on the Knicks side that they just switch off of it. The Celtics force them to switch.
yeah. So this may be a series where you got to pick your poison against Boston, and you pick a player that you leave open, and you double Tatum. You test Holiday. I think that's what I would do to see if he's going to hit open threes and really just play off of him, and focus my attention to Tatum and see what Brown's bringing early with that knee, but be ready in the third quarter when his knee feels better. That seems to be the how things work right now. Tatum gets you early, Brown gets you late, and then Tatum takes over in the fourth. But yeah, the double bigs is something I would be looking at, and maybe even playing Mitchell Robinson on like a Drew Holiday, and just saying, you know what, I'm going to give you the corner three, similar to what the Bucks did with Grant Williams in Game 7 that backfired against them in Boston. But sometimes you got to pick your poison, I guess you could say, to figure out how to slow down Tatum. Maybe you start off in this series to say, Bridges, we gave up 5 first-round picks for you. Anunoby, we brought you in. We're going to try to play Tatum one-on-one. But eventually, if Tatum's doing what he's doing against you, I think you have to try things like that, and just hope, somebody like Holiday coming off an injury, his hamstring, that he's not hitting his shots, and force Missoula to be the one to make adjustments. It's going to be a real tough series for the Knicks to win. There's a reason the Celtics are the heavy favorites. And I do think it's really hard to beat the Celtics by outscoring them. I think the way you beat the Celtics, well, obviously you have to outscore them to win, but you don't beat the Celtics in a track meet per se. I think you have to figure out a way to slow them down offensively. And Tibbs, I think, has to throw the kitchen sink at Boston, similar to the way that Eric Spoelstra used to do it with Miami.
Yeah.
It's not a single look. It's several different sets throughout the game that the Celtics have to adjust to, and tinkering with your lineups game to game. Maybe that's Precious Achua getting a little bit of run here and there. Maybe that's Landry Shamet at home, getting that guy off the bench who
Yeah.
could fire in some threes in a home game. But I think, those are the types of things you have to do when you're, in my opinion, a pretty big underdog.
They definitely are. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think defensively, it's such a disaster for the Knicks against this team that maybe the double bigs works a little bit better, but just matchup wise, like I know Eric Spoelstra used to go to zones and things like that, but the personnel for the Celtics is so much different now. And going zone against the Celtics this year was, when it happened, it was suicide because you were facing either Porzingis or Tatum out there on the nail, and it just there's no way to really defend that. And then I just look at the matchups
Unless
across.
Porzingis is playing,
Yeah,
you
unless
know,
he's playing. Yeah, sure.
yeah.
I mean, if the Celtics aren't shooting, if the Celtics are shooting poor, I mean, that's probably the best defensive recipe if the Celtics aren't making shots. Because otherwise I just look at this. You go one on one against Tatum, he's just finding matchups against you. He's finding Karl Anthony Towns, or he's finding Brunson, and he's actually shooting the best against Bridges. Like Bridges just can't play him one on one. The size and the Tatum's ability to get to his spot in space, it doesn't work. Um, is That's not a good matchup for Bridges. There's a lot of good matchups for Bridges. That one isn't. So you look at this across the board. What the Knicks can do defensively, I think it's extremely limited. Because they've doubled Tatum this year, and that hasn't worked. They've played him one on one. That doesn't work. I think you got to try to speed this game up as much as you can, especially on the offensive side, and then control the glass, control the glass, control the glass on both ends. Hold the Celtics to one shot. You get multiple looks. Force the Celtics to try to speed up because that's not the way they want to play against you. They want to get into the half court set and dominate you. So see if you crash the offensive rebound, maybe get them to speed up a little bit and try to get out on the run. Maybe that causes some errors. But I think the last thing is, when you mentioned Porzingis not going, probably their best hope because the Celtics have averaged, I think, close to 15 more threes a game against the Knicks this year, which is just an absurd amount. I don't think it will be that high in the playoffs, but they get off a lot more. They just get a lot of great shots against these guys all the time. And so, I don't know. We've seen it before. We've seen it last year in the playoffs, even at times. We've seen it in previous playoffs where the Celtics just go cold. And maybe that's what the Knicks need to happen more than anything else on the defensive end. Because I feel like the Celtics are going to feel like they're let out of prison after playing Orlando and then going to these guys. It's just night and day.
I mean, they're obviously really confident where Jason Tatum makes infomercials basically just making fun of the Knicks. He came out with another one recently doing the sub shop commercial talking about how the Knicks choke all the time. So
I guess the other element to this game too, Mike, and that is funny how he did that and he's 4-0 against them. It is funny. Is you try to get to the free throw line a ton if you're the Knicks and try to shoot the Celtics from the line.
That's their game plan against everybody. This is going to be a real frustrating series to watch because it's going to be a bunch of games of Jalen Brunson flopping around.
He does. And Karl Anthony Towns flops like a flounder, too. Like, he looks like a fucking idiot half the time. I'm sorry. I can't stand his game.
Yeah.
I cannot stand. I know he's a really good player, but good God, he's painful to watch.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. He'll give the Celtics some problems on the defensive end. It's interesting game to game. The way they've used Towns offensively has been different against Boston. I think when they post him up and he dominates inside, it actually hurts the Knicks because it turns into this ISO game where they're not forcing the Celtics to move around. And I know Mazzulla has been able to kind of bait the Knicks into that. The first time they met the season, opened the season, Towns was down on the post. He only took 2 3-point attempts in that game to open the season against Boston. So that'll be interesting to see because there'll be times where it's like Drew Holiday covering Karl Anthony Towns, and the Knicks are just going to keep going there and going there. And that's great for his numbers. The last time they played, he had like 20 points by the end of the first half, but the Celtics were winning.
Yeah.
And in the second half, he only scored like 4 points or 5 points for the rest of the game.
And look gassed.
And that's when it actually looked like the Knicks were going to win, and Boston kind of pulled it out in the end. So they're almost playing better if they have him around the perimeter shooting some threes. I think that's a part of his game that is such a asset to have. That against other teams, especially the Pistons, they used it pretty well, but they haven't gone to it much against Boston this year because they get that smaller matchup and they just go to it. And I think Joe is looking at that as like, yeah, we can hit 15 more threes than you if we have Towns hanging out on the post all game. Um, so that's something I'm interested to see is what they're going to do with that matchup. And I think the answer to that for New York is what you said. Go with the pick and roll as much as you can with Towns and Brunson, because you can get a lot of pick and pop there. And then suddenly you're going to see guys like Anunoby and Bridges wide open for three, even though the Celtics don't really cover Bridges from three this season. They just kind of let him shoot.
He's been shooting better lately.
He's been shooting better lately, though, so that might not be a good game plan. So we'll see what happens. Ultimately, this would be a huge upset, right? So the Celtics, don't let that happen. I think game one for the Knicks is kind of means a lot, I would think.
For them, yeah.
Yeah, I think traditionally against Boston, it's getting them in game two. But
We've seen game ones, where the
yeah,
Celtics have struggled. Yeah.
yeah, but you usually can steal a game one, and then going into game three, having your coach complain about the refs ahead of time is probably a good idea if you're New York. No matter what, bitch about the refs as you're going into New York to maybe steal another game by getting the calls. But I mean, those are the kind of shenanigans you got to pull when you're a big time underdog. And for me, I don't think any of us thought they were going to be a big time underdog during the offseason. I think when they made their moves during the offseason, we all kind of looked at it like, they have some wings now that this could be a 7-game series. Are they a real contender?
That's not how I felt. I said that before opening night, Mike, that this Karl Anthony Towns was going to be feasting for Tatum.
Yeah.
They were going to feast off this fucking guy, and that's happened all season. And it happened before when he was in Minnesota, too.
The narrative around the league wasn't that, right?
Yeah.
So I can imagine it's pretty disappointing. And, at the same time, all fans are unrealistic. So I'm sure New York fans have figured out a way to beat Boston. But you got to play physical. But this would be disappointing if the Celtics don't take care of this series.
Oh, of course.
This would be, in my mind, like...
This would be a big upset.
In my mind, there's no excuse for this to go more than 6. The Celtics should take care of this in 5 or 6.
Unless there's injury, obviously.
Depending on who the injury's to, yeah. But you never know. That's why we roll the balls out, and New York's got a lot of offense, so anything can happen.
They do, and that's why when we had the last pilot, I actually thought the Holiday injury going into the series was significant. I thought he was a guy, maybe more in this series than in others, where you really need him. He did a really, really good job in the overtime and fourth quarter against Brunson in the last win. On Brunson, obviously he can give you that look against Cat. I think his defense is really big in this series, so it's awesome that there was a clean injury report. Didn't even mention him as questionable or probable. He's just ready to roll. So that's a really big help. Mike, I got this in 5. I think maybe the Knicks win 1 or 2. Win either game 1 or 2 here in Boston, and then I think the Celtics win every other game. To me, it has that feel of a series. I don't think it'll be a sweep. But I think 5, I'd be even surprised if this goes 6.
Yeah, I got the Celtics in 6. I think there's always a good chance for the Celtics to have a game stolen early in the series. They've been sitting for a long time, so there's a chance they could come out really cold, or the absolute opposite, where they come out just
firing. Yeah,
I certainly expect one guy in game 1 to go off, and that's Al Horford. You give Al Horford a week off, he's going to hit 6 threes. But I think there's a chance it could go 6. New York has a lot of offense. I think, the Celtics have all played them pretty handily, and 8 out of 9 games the last 2 seasons, but I do think there's way too much talent on the other side of New York not to figure out how to win 2 games. Um, so we'll see what happens. I look at maybe a cold shooting night that Boston has, the third quarter like they had against Orlando, and quite frankly, there's been some times in this playoffs that the Celtics give me some pause with their ability to lock in and be focused at certain points. As I look at again that third quarter and the first half of Game 5 against Orlando is two examples of a team that has the ability to not be fully invested or fully there or fully locked in when they disrespect their opponent. So. I think maybe factors like that can make this go 6 games, but ultimately the Celtics are going to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's for sure. And Jim, I'm not 100% certain it's going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Can
So
I go
we'll
back
see.
to something you said
But,
before we go to that? Is just I didn't pick up on it when you said it earlier in the pod, but you mentioned Tibbs like trying to do different things defensively, offensively.
he
I actually
doesn't.
think that's key for the Knicks to have a coach to do that,
But he
and
doesn't.
and he just doesn't. And so maybe you don't switch as much defensively. Maybe you fight over screens and you hedge a little bit, with hard hedges or whatever. But he just has never done that. And so it'd be interesting, I don't know if he's ever been this much of a mismatch in a playoff series before going in like it is. With like you say, a lot of talent. So it's a mismatch, just because of matchups and things like that, but he still has a lot of talent. So how do you screw around with that and you make it a competitive series? And he hasn't really shown that ability as a coach throughout his coaching career. So we'll see.
Well,
All right, what
yeah,
you got to? I don't know if you want to add to that, but you're going to touch on last night.
yeah. I mean, even going back to when he was coaching with the Bulls, I think back to that Miami Heat series where there was no adjustments made at all to the fact that especially on the offensive end in that series with the way they were covering Derrick Rose and they were still running just like this gross ISO offense. While yeah, anyways, Indiana has looked really good in this postseason, Jim. Going back to their comeback against Milwaukee and in that series in general, and last night. I think I said it earlier in the postseason. You can't play the Pacers and not be ready to go with their style of play. You can't wait until the second half of Game 2 to make that adjustment. And we saw it with Cleveland last night. They made a nice little run, but the Pacers did what they did. They took away the 3-point line defensively. They were giving up the paint and begging you to go ISO. And what happened? Cleveland's ball movement stopped. They hit 9 threes. It was the first time in like 90 games that they hit less than 10 threes. Two guys contributed for 50 field goal attempts. So basically taking up all of Cleveland's offense. They did exactly what the Pacers wanted them to do. And what did the Pacers do? They did what they always do. They were efficient on offense.
Yeah.
You have to be ready for Indiana. You can't, and this is what happened to the Knicks last year. Whoever the Pacers played in the first round of the playoffs last year, and almost happened to the Celtics, but Indiana puked all over themselves in Boston. Um, you'll be down 2-0. And if you're coaching Cleveland right now, your job is to make sure that even if you hit the Pacers in that first quarter with a 10-point, 12-point lead, don't expect them to roll over and think we'll get them in Indiana, because this is a type of team that's going to come at you for 4 quarters. I'd be a little concerned if I'm a Cleveland fan right now. Your second best player has a toe issue and hasn't been on the floor. What's that about? Why isn't he out there? Um, you got Jalen
That's
Brown
right.
out here with a
Yeah.
knee issue. Is he that hurt that he can't be playing?
I would
Um,
say, yeah, if he's not going.
I know that people are questioning it,
Yeah.
especially on NBA radio, listening to going in this morning. People around the Cleveland, around the team, are questioning Garland's toughness. So this is a big game too for Cleveland. I think they have to make a statement because Indiana's the type of team that can get you and actually have an upset. It's not a New York Boston series where it'd be a complete shock to me.
I'm going to give you my take in just a second, but first we're going to take a break for our sponsors. Yeah, Mike, I look at this matchup here, and we've been saying it all year. Like you and I had an argument who would be a worse matchup earlier in the season between Cleveland and Indy for the Celtics. And I still think Indy's the toughest matchup for the Celtics. I think Cleveland's a better team. And so this is, two things are kind of at play here. One, I think Indiana's probably been the most disrespected good team in the NBA. I think they have been really good for 2 seasons. They won 50 games again. They know how to attack good teams offensively. They're kind of nasty defensively, even though you look at their personnel and you think it shouldn't be that great, but they are a little bit nasty there. Um, there's the ability to go after Halliburton. And so now I look at from the Cleveland perspective, this is a really, this is testing your championship medal a little bit. You see yourself as a championship team. You won a shitload of games. Now you don't want nothing. Like you said, Garland hasn't played. And a toe thing is tough. You don't think it is, but it's tough to explode if your toe is hurting. It's tough to have that first step. And if a guy like Garland doesn't have that first step at his size, he becomes an ineffective player. And he's already ineffective on the defensive end against this Indiana team. Let's not forget about that too. So how does Cleveland respond? I mean, it was interesting yesterday. It was, Indiana had that big lead. Cleveland went on that like 19-5 run at the end of the third. Felt like Mitchell was just building up a shitload of momentum. And the Pacers responded. They either took the lead back to going into the fourth. They were down one, and then they started the fourth and just took complete control of the game and never gave it back to Cleveland at all. I think Cleveland thought they were going to throw that punch, that really big punch, and that they were going to take control of the game, being at home with the place going nuts, and it never happened. Um, so what are you showing game two? Because I think this is a must win for Cleveland. I think if they don't win game two, they're definitely going back to Cleveland down 3-1.
I
And
think it's simple.
so
I think it's ball movement. I think it's slowing the game down and getting back to your driving and cutting and passing and getting the ball movement going and getting other guys shooting threes.
can they play Allen and Mobley together against this Indiana team? Because
Can
it
they?
didn't look like it worked to me.
You might not be able to, but they
Yeah.
got guys they could play Hunter more. They got guys that they can bring in Dean Wade to stretch the floor and go with Allen and Mobley by themselves. I also think there is the ability to go double big against Indiana if you're able to slow the game down on offense and just take advantage of your talent. You
Yeah.
have better players, and you dictate the pace, and you have to set that tone early in the game. You have to, and you have to take away the 3-point line defensively. But I think for Cleveland, it's on the offensive end. It's doing a better job with ball movement because it was just ISO basketball, and that's exactly what the Pacers want you to do.
Yeah, Neesmith was terrific on both ends in that game too. I thought he played one of his better games. So yeah, no, hey, it's 1-0. I was surprised, and I know you don't really look at these things, but the odds on this series was like a 401. The Pacers were plus like 410 to
Yeah.
win the series, and I thought I thought that was too much. I thought we're looking at it like a plus 270 or something around those lines. So the consensus on this is that it's a quick series, and it should be a quick series, but I think this is going 6 or 7. I'd still tell you today, I think the Cavs are going to find a way to get through it, but um, it's going to be a difficult one. It is going to be a difficult one. And I think of all the teams in the East, Indiana matches up against the Celtics the best. So if they were to get through it, I don't think Celtics fans should be excited to think, oh, we got an easier path. I don't know if that would be true.
Yeah. No, I don't either. I think both those teams are a formidable opponent in their own ways against Boston. I do think if Indiana beats Cleveland, it is an upset, but I think it's a possible upset based off of the way the Pacers play, how they're coached, and if you're not ready to go, they're ready to go every game, every single game. So,
Play with a
uh,
real edge. They play like of all the teams left, they play with as much of an edge as anybody.
Yeah, and you see the way Nimhard is hitting shots. This is the guy who struggled all regular season.
Hmm.
And here he is again in the
We saw
postseason.
him last year. Yeah.
Yeah. They have what's his name off the bench, that white little point guard, another one who just gets his points. Obi Toppin brings some problems. But again, Cavs didn't do a good job. They didn't do a good job exploiting matchups either. They were so ISO focused that at one point in the fourth quarter, Indiana had their backup center in there.
Thomas Bryant.
Thomas Bryant, yeah,
Yeah.
and the Cavs did nothing to address that when they had Evan Mobley on the floor against Thomas Bryant. So
Yeah.
you could have easily ran some action there and got Evan Mobley to take over that fourth quarter, which they did against Boston when Porzingis was out, and they just didn't do it. This wasn't, again, it's game one. It's the best time to steal a game against anybody. But again, Cleveland, do not let them steal game two as well, because they will.
I need to do a mea culpa on Miles Turner too, because I used to make fun of him. He was always on the trade block. Indiana was always looking to move him. The Celtics at one point, remember, had Pritchard covering him. They disrespected Turner so much, like 3 years ago. This guy's been awesome. He's really improved on both ends. He can get out and guard on the perimeter now. Like, he is really turned into a very nice big. And now we're talking about trying to find a way to get an extension for him going into the next offseason for Indiana. He's been a key player for them and will be a really key player in this series. Had a huge three to close the third too. That was, on that run. It was the last second he pump faked and then had the blow by and hit a corner three, a 7'2" guy hitting a corner three to end the quarter. That just shows the type of skill he has.
Yeah, almost lost in the game in the fourth quarter with some horrible turnovers, but
Yeah.
they certainly traded
Yeah.
away the right player, I think, in that Halliburton trade. So that worked out for them. And yeah, Pascal Siakam was a guy that was questioned when they picked him up
I
last year.
certainly did. Yep.
He fits in just fine, and actually has killed Boston this season. Had a tough game last night from the floor, but he's fitting good. So yeah, they're a good team. Yeah, Jim, I got to get off the pod soon. Anything out west, that you're looking forward to? Really can't figure out Golden State. Again, they'll be dealing with a lot of size, but they just have that championship medal to them, and they really figure out a way to win. I don't know how to pick that Minnesota Golden State series.
I think Minnesota's going to win. I think if you had a team that had any offensive continuity on the other end, that's a 6-game series against. There was sure that championship toughness or whatever proved through in Game 7, but Houston outplayed them for the majority of the series and just didn't have anything going offensively. I think that's a little bit different. Minnesota, even though Minnesota's been Jekyll and Hyde this year, and hopefully they continue to play well for their sakes. But I think we're looking at an OKC Minnesota conference finals.
All right. Yeah. It'll be interesting. OKC is really good. No, not really good. The best on-ball defenders in the league playing OKC. But Denver doesn't play ISO ball at all. So I wonder if that's going to work to Denver's advantage at all, and if they have a shot in this series on the offensive end. So we'll see. I mean, obviously Jokic is going to have to play out like he did during the championship run for that to happen. Yeah, but I agree with you. It's probably going to be OKC and Minnesota, and OKC going to the finals. So it doesn't really feel like a hard path for OKC right now. So
no, unless Minnesota just continues to play at a high level and improve, and they're more like what they were last year than what they were this year, then that's a different scenario. I mean, Julius Randle, I was shocked at how well he played against the Lakers. He really dominated.
Yeah.
If they get that, then who knows? So Rudy Gobert too. Rudy Gobert was friggin' awesome in the closeout game. He was the best player on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
And Luka looked out of shape. Luka looked like a guy I wouldn't give an extension to. I'm gonna be honest. I saw that, seeing him out there, he looked worse than he was in the NBA Finals.
His defense is so pathetic. Even on the help side, it's so terrible. He's
Yeah,
playing
I
five
know.
against four with him on the floor, and then
I know we beat up on Dallas, but maybe Dallas was on to something. I would think twice about an extension to that guy right now. I feel like he could blow up like Joel Embiid on you. I don't know. But anyways,
the
yeah,
thing with the Dallas thing, like the trade was still stupid. Like
it was stupid.
I
Yeah,
don't think trading Luca was the stupid part. I think trading him then in the return and only working with the Lakers was the incredibly stupid part. So
yeah. Boy, did he look
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
All right, Jim.
All right.
Girls Celtics. Game 1 tonight. Game 2's Wednesday, right?
Yep. 1 and 2 both. Hey, 7 o'clock starts. Which
Yeah.
good for me.
When do they play in New York? Is it Friday or Saturday?
I think the first one's Friday. Yeah, I think,
Oh,
but I'd
right.
have to go back and look. So.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we could be 4 games in by the end of the week. All right, sounds good.
Perfect. All right. Talk to everyone soon.